Firstly, how does it feel to be back in an England squad, particularly back in a T20 squad? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, but it's great. It's great to be back amongst the lads. Whenever you get called up for England, big believer in not taking anything for granted. So, yeah, really nice to be back with the team. And as you say, especially with the T20 setup, I haven't been here for a while. So, yeah, really excited to be back in and ready to play some cricket.
Did you fear that you may have played your last T20 for England?
I didn't fear that I played my last. I thought that I might have played my last. But, that's just the way it goes. I think in many, many ways it has kind of helped my Test and ODI career as well. Having not played T20 for a little while for England meant that I could focus on a few of the formats. To play all three at the highest level is quite tricky to do. I suppose more so as a bowler and as an all-rounder. So, I don't think I was, I never kind of thought that it was over, but then at the same time, I would have been surprised if I kind of got back in. So, it did come as a little bit of a surprise to get the call.
Yeah. T20 seems to change every season. How much do you think it's changed in the 5 years since you last played?
It's changed, but it's still effectively the same game. Still a bat and a ball. I think a lot of things that have changed in that time have been more in terms of analysis type of things, and what goes on behind the scenes has changed. So therefore, the thoughts of how people play the game has changed a little bit. It's still batters and bowlers and fielding and high paced cricket. So in terms of that side of things, it hasn't changed too much, but. I think a lot of the game is thought about off the field more so than it probably was 6 years ago. And
just more broadly, it's been a while since you've been in any England squad because of various things happening around the world. What's it been like as an international player for the last 12 months? How have you found it?
It's been very different. I think, spending a lot of time in bubbles and isolating and quarantine that goes with that has made life a little bit tough. But, everyone has had it tough around the world in different separate lockdowns and, not being able to see family and friends. So we are fortunate that we've still been able to play cricket. That is for sure. But by no means has it been easy being away from home during that time as well. So it has been tricky, but at the same time, very grateful that we've played a lot of cricket over the past year. But, as it is with all sports, it hasn't been the same without fans. It's great to see fans on the way back. As we've seen over the last month or so, to see fans back in the grounds has just, brought joy to a lot of people. And the players are no different in that aspect. To be playing in front of fans, that's what we live for. And it certainly brings a different edge to the game. So, excited for that.
And how do you reflect on your IPL experience this year? Obviously very different. You and the other guys, you're back in this squad. How do you look back on that now?
Yeah, it's obviously in a way, it's a very different type of IPL. Obviously, no fans, bubble life, as I've mentioned before, and then obviously with it being postponed halfway through, it obviously had a very different feel to it this year. By no means did that mean the cricket wasn't of a high standard. It was still great to be a part of. I think the right decision was eventually. We got to the right decision eventually by putting it on hold. Everyone getting back to respective places around the world and families. Obviously, what India was going through was very tough, and we obviously think of them through that tough time. But the cricket side of things was great. Always good to learn from different people there. Great experiences playing against very, very good players. And when the world's best play against each other, it's always a great spectacle. So always good to be a part of that.
Yeah, and for you on the cricket side now, how much of an incentive is the World Cup to get in and be in that squad?
Yeah, I think I have to look at it that way. I think we've touched on the fact that I haven't been in this squad for a while, but I just see it as an opportunity. There's no real other way I think I should look at it. It's great for me to be back amongst the squad. I haven't played for England for a little while, so I'm excited to be back wearing the three lions. And as I said, I don't take any squad selection for granted. And, I'm certainly not just here to make the numbers. That would be silly of me to think that, I might not get a chance or an opportunity. So if I do get a go, I'll be trying to, stake a claim. And, I also realised that there's a few injuries knocking around that has given me an opportunity to be here. But it doesn't take anything away from me being part of this England team and trying to do as best as I can to put my hand up and see what happens, with obviously a World Cup or even 2 World Cups around the corner. Yeah.
And just lastly, how do you look on this series? What are you expecting from Sri Lanka?
A dangerous team, I suppose. T20 cricket has exploded all around the world, hasn't it? And, they've got their own franchise league now in Sri Lanka as well. And, players are playing this format all around the world and gaining experience all around the world. So you're always coming up against world-class players, and they're very dangerous as well. And, Sri Lanka will certainly have a few of those in their ranks. And we're expecting a tough series. It's a 3-match series. And, I suppose the first punch in the first game is always crucial in a 3-match series. So we're expecting a tough challenge.
Great. Thanks very much, Chris.
Cheers.
Okay, we'll go John Etheridge and then Rory Dollard.
Chris, hi. It's been a strange few months for you, really. A player of the year last year, and you've not played a single match in any format for England since September for a variety of reasons. Can you sort of reflect on the last few months and I guess the frustrations that's brought you?
Yeah, I think that's the best way of putting it, really. Frustrating winter for me. Obviously, the South Africa tour pre-Christmas, what happened with COVID, and we were obviously due to play that ODI series and never played there, and then obviously we went home, and then the unfortunate events of having to isolate when we got to Sri Lanka, having been in close contact with Mo, I suppose just all bubbles up to frustration, and a really frustrating time, really. And then obviously not playing a single game all winter after the summer that I had. It almost just felt like a bit of a waste for me. Still great to be with the squad, but you want to be playing cricket, and you want to be making the most of your form when you're hot, I suppose. So yeah, really, really frustrating. Obviously, I didn't get a go in India either, which at the same time was unfortunate. But I was excited by going to IPL, getting into a different environment. Different, I suppose, of team environment to pick some brains and try and get playing cricket again. Played a few games there, obviously, but obviously that was cut short. So I'm excited to play some cricket. Great to be back out there with Warwickshire Bears over the last week or so. And yeah, just want to put that behind me, really, and look to what's ahead, because it's certainly been a tough seven or 8 months or so since last September.
Could you have made yourself available for the second test against New Zealand? Or was that sort of rest period absolutely set in stone?
Yeah, it's tricky, John, I think. Obviously spent a lot of time away from home over that period. I think it kind of taken its toll mentally. I mean, obviously the IPL was very much, a decision which I decided to take on, and obviously take full respect. It's on my shoulders that. But I felt like it was a great opportunity for me to go and learn and play some cricket, having had the wins that I'd had. And obviously those 2 tests against New Zealand were put in quite late. But I think the issue was that I was going to have to then kind of, as soon as getting out of isolation in London, I'd have had to basically had a few days at home and then play for Warwickshire to make myself available for any part of that test series. And also there's the tricky side of COVID restrictions, to get back into that bubble would have been tricky as well. So I think once we'd made the decision, it was never really an option to play the second test match. You'd have had to have been in the bubble from the start.
Thank you.
Okay, Rory, then Paul Newman.
Chris, you'll know obviously that your reputation is as the nicest man in cricket, and we all know you're sort of that. You've got that team man persona. Is it with the games you have missed recently? Is there some sort of feeling that you need to make it quite clear to the coach and the captain that you'd really rather like to play quite a lot of test matches against India, and that maybe you're not okay with missing out?
It's a real tricky situation, really, because I think I've just touched on it with John. Time away from home at the minute. The amount of time we spend away, I felt like I really needed a little refresh and time at home and spend time with the young family. I think that was really important for me, and I kind of put up the the pros and the cons of obviously missing that 2-match series. It was very much kind of in our hands. So, I spoke to Spoons and the rest of the backroom staff here, and they kind of said it was, as much as we feel that you probably should have a bit of a breather and get away from cricket, they said kind of it's on you a little bit whether you'd like to. If you want to be a part of that, then we more definitely will let you. And I decided that I think that too, that little bit of a break would do me good in the long run. So yeah, I mean, look, they certainly know I want to play Test cricket. Don't get me wrong. I think the way the schedules are falling at the minute is tricky, and I obviously haven't played much red ball cricket, but they certainly know that I want to be a part of that Test squad moving forward. I believe they want me to be a part of that Test squad. So hopefully, come that India series, I'll be fit and firing and ready to play a big part of that.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul, and then Matt Henry to finish.
Hi, Chris. I was going to ask you about that taxi ride with Mo, actually, because it seemed to be the knock-on effect from there that continued to rule you out. I mean, was that the sort of, it was an unlucky break, really, wasn't it? But is that how you see it? That was the unlucky break that had a knock-on effect from you missing lots of cricket?
Yeah, I think so. To be brutally honest, I think it is. I think I touched on this earlier. In another interview, I think I said I felt like I was kind of a shoo-in to play that first Test match in Sri Lanka, and obviously having what happened, and therefore obviously it did have a knock-on effect, and the team wins or the team does well, and all of a sudden it becomes hard to break back in. So I do think that was a big unfortunate event really for myself, which did have a knock-on effect to the rest of my winter with England. It doesn't mean that I'd have played all the Test matches for the winter, but it might have meant that I'd have had an opportunity to put my hand up and put in a strong performance. And then the thoughts around selection for the further Test matches might have been different. So yeah, it was a big moment, and there's been apologies and things like that, but in the end of the day, it's an unfortunate situation which obviously we were put in, and obviously missed out because of that.
I guess in these COVID times, every precaution has been taken in every way, isn't it? So I suppose in some ways it was a bit of a surprise you weren't taking separate taxis. Yeah,
there is that. And obviously that was, I obviously vented my frustration at the time. And as I said, the apologies were given, but like you said, I think every stone was made sure that it was turned, and we didn't leave anything. And unfortunately, that was the one thing that we did not quite get right. And obviously, I did pay a price for that, but we can't turn back time.
Could I also just ask you, Ashley Giles has said that you guys won't be allowed to go back to the IPL if it clashes with those little autumn tours to Bangladesh and Pakistan if everything goes ahead. Are you happy with that? Do you think all the guys will be happy with that?
I don't think it's an issue whether we'll be happy or not with it, to be honest with you. I think it's a tricky situation where, the schedules with England is obviously looking pretty brutal for the next however long, right through till probably the start of next summer, pretty much. And those fixtures have been there for a long time. If you're contracted and whatnot with England, it's going to be quite tricky to make that tournament unless you're not selected for certain tours, and you're not part of those squads. If you're not part of those squads, then I don't see why there'd be any issue. But like you say, if it does clash with England fixtures, I don't think the ECB would be too happy with us, missing England cricket to go and play there.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, last one from Matt, please.
Hi, Chris. It's obviously good for you to be back in the T20 squad, and you mentioned the World Cup later this year. Obviously, the Ashes comes quickly after that. Will there need to be a priority between one or the other when it comes to it, do you think? And where would your loyalties lie?
I mean, look, I've not really thought that far ahead, to be honest with you. I don't think, this call-up came as a bit of a surprise in the first place. So for me to start thinking about being at a World Cup later on in the year is not really on my radar at the minute. But, obviously the Ashes at the back of my mind. Obviously, I'm desperate to be a part of that squad. And, that is certainly a priority, and I'm sure it's a priority for everyone at England cricket as well, as long with the World Cup. But I think what you find now is you've got a lot of players that play, certain formats. There's only a very few limited amount of players that play both. And I think they'll both be prioritised in their own right. So, obviously the multi-format players will have to be looked after from a fitness perspective and a workload perspective. But I'd imagine they want their best players playing in both. So I don't think you can almost put a priority on either. I think it's quite handy that you've got just T20 players and you've got just Test players as well. And those few that do play both will just have to be looked after very, very carefully.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Many thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.